Alrighty guys, it is Qaaman here today with another Uncut Talk, and as you guys can hear from this, I actually got a new Blue Yeti microphone, so we can continue making videos the same way we always have for years. And today, I want to talk to you guys about something that I've never really shared my true opinion on YouTube. And to be quite honest with you, it's actually a video that some of you may not like, but I've always wanted to share my core thoughts on this. And this is the fact that Fat Buu, or Majin Buu if you want to go with that name, is actually my least favorite character in the Dragon Ball series. And this isn't really a rant, this is more of a character criticism as to why I particularly hate this character, and I've always hated this character ever since I was a child, more than any other Dragon Ball character that's ever existed. And why exactly is this? Well, the first thing we have to do is we have to go back to the Buu Saga itself. Now, if you look at the Buu arc compared to the Saiyan Saga, the Android arc, and the Cell arc, or the Frieza arc, this is the arc in Dragon Ball that is by far the most gag humor friendly. I mean, you got a villain here that essentially turns people into candy, acts childish, all the 9 yards. But specifically when it comes to Fat Buu, and I understand that Toriyama was trying to go back to that gag humor, this is what made the Buu Saga feel awkward, because looking at the direction of Dragon Ball from going into the 22nd tournament, the King Piccolo arc, the Piccolo Jr. arc, and then the Saiyan arc, Dragon Ball was progressively getting a lot more serious from the initial arc where we saw the Pilaf gang and going to go see Master Roshi and all of those moments that we had throughout the series. And by the time we got to the Buu arc, we'd already had such a serious established storyline set up that going back to this weird gag humor friendly content just didn't feel in place. And in terms of Fat Buu, having a main villain that essentially just wants to turn people into candy and is a naughty child with virtually no motives felt very out of place to begin with. And I think that when you really analyze Fat Buu as a character, a lot of what he did throughout the arc caused characters to sacrifice themselves for absolutely no reason. So, Fat Buu as a character is completely overpowered in the sense where he's just super strong and he can regenerate himself from virtually anything. So, cool characters that were developed like the Buro were quickly wiped out, Vegeta gave his life, Gohan was taken off the show for an extended period of time, and two villains such as Qaaman, who had a very interesting ability, were completely casted aside and wiped out to promote this child that could easily be convinced not to save the Earth. And why exactly is this a problem? Well, you see, when you look at characters like Frieza and Cell and Vegeta, these characters had legitimate motives to do what they did. Fat Buu didn't have a motive, he was just taking orders from Babidi, and then when you actually look at the entire arc itself, by Mr. Satan coming into the picture, he simply told Fat Buu, hey, you shouldn't do wrong things, it's bad, be a good guy, and then Fat Buu essentially became a good guy right before Evil Buu came out. And it's like, well, if this is that easy, then why in the world was the entire point of having this character even to exist if you just made him a good guy eventually? And you could obviously see that Toriyama was just filtering all the different types of plots that could go into this character by creating Evil Buu and then Kid Buu and then Super Buu and then creating all of these transformations that were essentially a reduced carbon copy of each other going forward. And this brings me into my next point where I want to talk about all the different Majin Buus. All of the Majin Buus essentially are very limited on their own. Kid Buu is just an evil monster. Super Buu is the smartest Majin Buu, but only after he absorbed Piccolo and Gohan. And then when you look at Evil Buu, he's essentially just a skinny gray version of what Kid Buu is. So all Majin Buu forms are actually completely limited in what their plot is, and Dragon Ball has often had these villains where you have characters like Janemba and Hirudegarn, and you just have these pointless rage monsters that all they do is they just want to kill and fight and do everything. And that's not wrong. I'm not saying that rage monsters are incorrect, but the funny thing about this is that if you're going to go with a rage monster, that's fine. In the case of Fat Buu, he's actually the Majin Buu that has the most personality, and out of all the personalities, he's probably the least interesting Majin Buu, even with the most personality, because all he wants to do is be a naughty kid and eat candy. And I understand that some of you are going to say the whole reason as to why Fat Buu acted a lot less aggressive was because he had the Elder Kaioshin in him, but if you really think about it, guys, that really doesn't matter because we learned that so late into the Buu saga, and it still doesn't take away from the fact that Majin Buu on its own was an inherently annoying character. And looking at that and looking at all these fights that Buu had, where he fought against Super Saiyan 3 Goku and was just acting so childish, like, "Ooh, I want to fight this guy!" It was just, it didn't feel like a threatening fight. Like, every time that Fat Buu came around, even though he was a powerful threat, I never felt like he was a villain. I always felt that it was like, okay, this guy's just there. He's not really a villain, he's just a character that exists for plot convenience to create even worse Majin Buus, and then by creating even bigger Majin Buus, it just makes the plot more convoluted. So what I'm getting at here is that Fat Buu never really needed to exist. If you just made Kid Buu from the very beginning, or Super Buu or Evil Buu, then you would have never had a need for Fat Buu. The only thing he ever did to some value was to hold off Kid Buu on the planet of the Kais, and you could have easily have rewritten the plot so that wasn't even necessary. I mean, for crying out loud, Goku could have wished back all of his friends to that planet to fight Kid Buu at one time, or done a fusion. So all of this essentially is just pointing at how the Buu saga had certain issues, but how flawed Fat Buu was as a character. And, you know, if we go back to Dragon Ball Super, guys, and I understand that a lot of you are gonna a lot of you are probably gonna remember that I did a rant video on this, but one thing that I hated about Super is that Super went back to the Buu saga and just multiplied how useless Fat Buu actually was as a character. They didn't know what to do with him, so every time that there was a serious plot that was taking place, they either made him fall asleep or he just was absent for XYZ reasons. And although there are multiple ways that you could easily just wake Majin Buu up, they always found ways to write him off the show. And why do you think they did this, guys? Well, I think there are two reasons. For the Tournament of Power setting, I believe that Fat Buu's powers are way too overpowered for a tournament setting. Yes, Piccolo is able to regenerate too, but he can't regenerate on the level that Fat Buu can. And if you have a character like Fat Buu in the Tournament of Power based off of how, you know, the exhibition match was fought against Basil, I think that that would have made Fat Buu way too overpowered for these casual villains in other universes that cannot regenerate. So when you look at his overpowered abilities, I think that had a key point to it, and I think the other key point is that the Toei writers, such as myself, have acknowledged that Fat Buu is such an uninteresting childlike character that it wouldn't necessarily be good for marketing to have him in the Tournament of Power, and bringing in characters like Android 17 and 18 who are much more intelligent and characters that actually have a lot more to them as characters would be significantly more interesting to the plot. And although I was originally against the idea of Frieza going into the Tournament of Power because we've seen Frieza so many times, I do think having a much more mature, serious character like Frieza by far improved the quality of the Tournament of Power because of Frieza's personality as compared to Fat Buu's. So even the Toei staff themselves realized how unimportant Fat Buu could actually be for a future arc, which is another reason why I feel like his character existence never needed to exist. And last but not least, guys, I think the final point that I should make about Fat Buu that is kind of more on a personal level, but just something that I've noticed a lot of Dragon Ball fans can relate to, is the fact that he's just an annoying character in general. His Japanese voice, his English voice, the attacks that he uses on Dragon Ball video games where he just bumps into you with his belly, you know, just going into moments throughout the series where he just does these things. And I've actually thought about this long and hard, guys. There are certain Dragon Ball characters that you would consider annoying, but, you know, Fat Buu is just, he's just not fun to watch. Like in Dragon Ball GT, all this guy did was he fused with Oob to give Oob a power-up that eventually did absolutely nothing, even though Oob was training with Goku for years. He's always been a useless character, he's always been an annoying character, and he's always been a character that was just there. Fat Buu is the epitome of a Dragon Ball character that was just created to be created. He did nothing for the series, and I would love to see a lot of you guys respond to me in the comment section below as to why you would like this character. I understand some of you might find him fun. I've always found him annoying. I've always found him the epitome of weak Dragon Ball villains or good guys. And I've always felt from the very beginning that this was the character that ruined the Buu arc. If you subtracted him and made Kid Buu the guy who was in, you know, the Majin Buu ball or Super Buu or one of the other Buus, I felt that could have made the arc a lot better considering how serious the arc began and then how childish it turned out to be. And I think a lot of that has to do with how weak of a character Fat Buu actually was. So ultimately, guys, that's been all of my thoughts on Fat Buu. I've never really liked this character. I've always hated him from day one. And I honestly wanted to share my thoughts with you in an extended video today where I just kind of speak my mind and go off the cuff, because this is something that I felt for years and I'd love to hear your thoughts in challenging my argument. And all I ask is that you guys respectfully take my opinion and respond with your thoughts in general. So with everything else said, please remember to rate, comment, and subscribe. And remember, as I always say, to have a great day, guys.